This is Marty Wilson speaking. It's April 8th, 2014, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm sitting in my living room in Delaware Water Gap with Mr. Arthur Arnold. Is it Doctor or Mr.? You haven't known.
Mr.
And we're here to talk about Sterling Strauser. Art, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about how you met Sterling.
I'm a native of Monroe County, living in the house where my family was living when I was born.
No kidding.
So I know a lot about the area, and I know a little bit about Sterling and his wife Dot. Great.
So before we get to Sterling, you were a professor at the university. Were you head of the chair of the...
When I retired, I was chairman of the department, yes.
Foreign language department.
Yeah.
And when did you retire? What year?
91.
91. So have you been an art aficionado all your life?
Somewhat, yes. Yeah.
So what's the connection between you and Sterling?
I met Sterling in about 1954. I had seen him and his wife prior to that. They did outdoor shows at Courthouse Square in the summertime, but I had never really spoken with them. But in 1954, one of my colleagues at VFMA was getting married, and I wanted to have something different as a gift. And I thought, what could be more representative of Monroe County than a Sterling Strauser floral? So I bought a small floral, and a friend framed it, and that began a very close relationship for many, many years. The first piece that I bought for myself was displayed on Crystal Street at Zocker's store. Sterling would put a couple of paintings in the window there. And my father was working in Hoboken. He would come home Friday nights on the train. I would meet him there. And so while I was waiting, I'd walk across the street and look in the windows. And the first painting was a bullfight. And it was a very different painting because you could hang it upside down and it would be just as interesting as normal. Well, at that time, I didn't have a place to hang it. But a friend had an apartment, and I asked him, would he take it for me for a while? Oh, yes, yes. Then I built a small house for myself, and I was ready to hang the painting, and he wasn't willing to give it up. So I later got a better painting of a bullfighter.
Did he pay you for it?
Did anybody ever pay me for anything? No.
No kidding.
No. Then a very interesting painting that I bought from Zocker's window is an abstract of Crystal Street. There is an outline of a train heading north, and it's a terrible storm. It's abstract, and it's also a bit of collage. I will not tell you that it's my favorite painting, because actually everything in the collection is a favorite or it wouldn't have been bought. The collection between Sterling and Dot comprises over 100 works. Buying from Sterling was very interesting because he always tried to show another folk artist. Savitsky, or McCarthy, Old Ironsides, and I just wasn't interested. I know that I probably could have made money buying those things, but they didn't interest me. So we would buy from Sterling. All of his paintings were in stick frames, which his brother Fred would make for him. And to me, oh, that's all the painting needed. Then we met Tracy Granger and took her a couple of pieces, and it's amazing how the frame brought out all the characteristics of the paintings. And
Tracy would reframe them, is that what you mean?
Yes, yes. And we became very friendly with Tracy. Carry a painting in, put it on her counter. She knew where she was going to hang it in the house. And she would frame it, bring it out, and hang it. In 1965, Ted Keller came to the college in the English department, and we became quite friendly. As a matter of fact, we decided to build a house together in Tannersville, quite a large house. But my father died a few years later, and I inherited the family property. And so we sold Tannersville and did a good renovation of the Chipperfield house. And then the collection started to grow and grow.
Can I ask you quick? When you mentioned Zucker's store, was it? How do you spell
Zockers? Z-A-C-H-E-R apostrophe S.
Okay. So you bought your first paintings there, but when apparently you've been to Sterling's house and you probably bought your later paintings there.
Oh, we bought everything from Sterling. Yes.
So how'd you go from buying them at the house at the store to his house?
Well, I had been to the house to buy that first painting for my friend.
Oh.
The fact that these were on display at Zockers did not mean that I actually purchased them from Zocker. I purchased them from Sterling. He just had them on display there.
I want to ask you about his house, but before we do, what was it like at the store? I mean, did he have a lot of paintings on display?
No, just a couple in the front window.
And they would be rotating, a rotating display?
Yeah, if he would sell something, he might put another painting there. Yeah.
All right. Well, what was his house like?
It was a mishmash of everything. No organization at all. He knew where things were, and it was fun to go there, and behind the house they had what was called the ice house, just filled with paintings. You could go in and root through there and sometimes find something they really liked. And in the house, there was a sitting room, what could have been a dining room, but that was just piled high with things, where Jasper was usually curled up in a wooden bowl. Jasper was the cat.
Okay. Now, when you say piled high with things, you mean paintings?
No, all sorts of things. Because Sterling was a collector. He liked to go to flea markets, and he would buy antique toys, which he sometimes would include in a painting, and his wife would use as a model in some of her hookings. And I'm going to get to her hookings. Then there was the kitchen. I don't know how they ever ate in the kitchen, because that table was also piled high. But Dot would sit there and be working on a watercolor or one of her hookings. We would try to negotiate with Sterling on a painting, and he would have to go into the kitchen to talk to Dot. And we'd hear this conversation in the background. Well, no, I think I should get this. No, you should get that. And
she asked for more. She said more.
Yeah. And all right, we decided we were going to buy it, regardless of the price. We knew we were going to buy the painting. Then we had to have a green stamp. There was always a green stamp, which usually consisted of a nude, maybe 3x8, 3x9. He would turn those out a dozen at a time, throw them in a desk drawer, and you could have one of those as a green stamp. Or you could have one of Dot's watercolors. So he was very generous at giving his wife's things away.
Did you ever run across paintings with a D on the back?
Yes, those were Dot's, and they were supposed to stay in the attic in her collection.
Okay.
When Sterling, in his last year, was very ill, he no longer could go upstairs. So they put a bathroom downstairs, and he was sleeping on sort of a cot. And then he would have nursing care. I always made cup custards for friends who were ill. So I'd take him his cup custards. He would usually have a little errand for me to do. Go to the pharmacy, go to the bank, or the grocery store, something I was glad to do for him. And he said, Art, if there were a switch on the wall, I would turn it right now. And I said, Sterling, don't talk that way. Tomorrow there might be a cure. No. And above the bed, he had what was called the night train, a very small train, but very dark. And when Ted saw that, he said, Sterling, if you ever sell it, I'd like to buy it. So Sterling put Ted's initials on the back of that train. And after Ted died, or after Sterling died, Ted spoke to Dot and said, Sterling said I could buy that. And she said, no, it's yours. She was very generous with us. And I miss her quite a bit. One of Sterling's favorite things to say when you bought a painting was, what did he say? I'm a mercenary wretch. So after Sterling died, Dot stayed on Analumic Street for a few months. And then she had to go and live with her daughter. Betty Miller, who was in the business office, and I went there several times to have lunch with Dot and her daughter Jill. Jill died, and then Dot had to move in with her grandson. Tracy Granger and I went there to visit her. She had just folders filled with watercolors, and she said, "Take as many as you want." Well, neither one of us could take, but we did buy some very good watercolors at the time. We should have bought a lot more, but you know.
Did you ever see either of them? Well, you mentioned Dot at the table in the kitchen, but did you ever see Sterling actually paint in the process of painting?
No, I did not. He had told Ted to come in and he would give him some instructions, but Ted never did go in.
Are you a painter? Do you dabble at all? Did you?
I once painted my piano.
With a paintbrush.
And, of course, painted the walls in the first little house that I had. I can't draw a good line with a ruler. I'm just not able to. I appreciate art, but I can't create.
So did Ted take him up on it? Did he?
No, Ted never did. Ted did one painting in his lifetime, which was quite good, and he wouldn't touch the paints again.
Do you remember anything wrong with Sterling's eyes? There was a period.
Oh, yes.
What
yes.
was that? What do you remember about that?
He was losing sight, cataracts, and there was a period when his paintings were very, very dark. And I have one, which is beautiful. Then after the cataracts, things were much brighter.
A couple of people have talked about how he, every day at sunset, he would walk up on top of the hill to watch the sunset. Do you know about that? Have you ever...
I think he did.
Yeah.
He had a friend, a Russian painter, Papa Berliuk, who would come here, and the two of them would go out in the fields and paint, and then swap paintings. We were able to get two of Berliuk's portraits, small portraits. And one was of Jerry Pine, who was also an artist, and the other was, looked like a Spanish count. Jerry Pine went to Dickinson College, and the Count went to Lebanon Valley College for permanent collections. We had hoped at one time that our whole collection would be intact, but there's no place big enough to take it now.
Is your house big enough? Is it, or are they stored, or?
No.
They're all hanging on the walls?
All hanging.
No kidding.
Yeah. I know some people buy paintings and stick them in closets or under beds. I would never do that. If I have it, it's going to be displayed.
Is Sterling the only painter you collect?
Really collect, yes. Sterling and Dot.
Yeah.
I have a Jody Thomas, and I should have bought more Jody Thomas because I like him. One Nancy Hebbard, who at one time Sterling told us she was the best trained artist in the area. I have a Gary Kresge, and I think that's it.
Mm-hmm. So earlier you said you were going to talk about Dot, how she did her pointing, is it?
Her hookings.
Hookings.
Very interesting. It's her own style. And Tracy Granger, who's now doing rugs, hooking rugs, said she's sorry she didn't spend more time with Dot to see what that procedure happened to be. You look at the hooking and it's fine. And if you don't frame it, the backside could also be shown. It has a pattern. When we had the house appraised, and we took the appraiser to see the Strausers, he was very impressed with them. And when he was all finished, took him several days because he photographed the whole house. China, furniture, everything. He said, Dot Strauser is a better painter than Sterling.
No kidding.
Yes. And I told Sterling that.
Oh, he was alive at the time.
He was alive, yes.
What'd he say?
I don't know if his feathers were ruffled a little, but I think there was a bit of pride to know that his wife was so good.
Oh, yeah. My impression was that he was a very generous, I mean, from talking to people, I never met him, that I can remember, but that he was a very generous guy, maybe a little sensitive, soft-spoken.
He could be very upset with certain things.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, he could get angry. Never with me. But I could see that in him.
You mean minor annoyances during the day kind of things?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you remember him going to the ocean? You know,
I know he did because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5 seascapes that he did.
Was it one trip or was it several trips?
I think he must have gone more than once, but I wasn't aware of when he did go.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions I always ask people is, what is it about Sterling's work? You know, explain it to me, a person that, I don't have any Sterling's trousers.
No, I can see that.
Yeah, yeah. What is it about Sterling's work for you? How does it speak to you?
It's just something so different. And once you get hooked, you're hooked. It's the Seascapes. I had one, and I liked it very much. And Laura Evans, who was in the physical education department, gave me my first Schnauzer. Well, I couldn't accept something like that without giving something in return. So I asked Sterling to do her a seascape, which he painted with a kitchen spatula. Just smeared it on. He would do a painting in an evening when another artist would take days to do an oil.
He was prolific, that's for sure.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
I'm curious about this, and this isn't official, but there are so many Sterlings out there. What do you think is going to happen over time to Sterlings?
I don't know. At one time, someone called him a modern Picasso. And we thought the value would jump, but it hasn't. Maybe it's because there are so many in the area.
Yeah.
You can go on eBay and find them.
Have you been over to the university to see the show that's up on in the new building?
Is it a new show?
The Innovation Center on the 3rd floor. Have you been in the Innovation Center, the new building?
Yes.
Yeah.
The show was last year.
Yeah, it's been up ever since.
When I loaned 2 paintings for that show.
Well, what else should I have asked you about Sterling? Is there anything else you can... Do you have any favorite Sterling stories?
No, they were just generous people.
Mm-hmm.
Their favorite restaurant was Pepe's, and they would take us there to lunch. And really, you would think that the royalty was coming in because they, Strausers, come.
Yeah.
And we got very nice treatment.
What was the relationship between those two, like Dot and Sterling?
Very close. Very close. You can never see any form of smooching or anything like that, but they were a very close couple.
But of the two, she was more the business-oriented one, would you say?
I would say so, yeah. We tried to see if Bloomsburg would take our whole collection. And I did get in touch with the department chairman of the art. And she said, well, I think I've heard the name. And the Strausers are probably the two most well-known graduates of Bloomsburg.
No kidding. Oh, that's right, they went there. Yeah.
And she thought she'd heard the name. What an art department they must have.
Well, this has been great. Is there anything else I should have asked you about the Sterling Strauser or Dot?
Not that I can think of. I'll think of something when I'm driving home, probably.
Yeah. Well, no, that was very good. All right. Well, I guess we'll call it a day then.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks very much.